I was attracted very early to the notion of being your own boss, of having your own business, being an entrepreneur. I didn't know the word back then, but I knew being your own boss because my father was, and my father had grown up as a farm kid, and he had his own farm. He and my mother bought a farm, and we had moved from Cleveland, a suburb of Cleveland, to a farm town west of Cleveland called Milan, Ohio, actually quite a historically important town if you look it up on Google. And that's where Thomas Edison was born. I spent a lot of time with my father when I was a child, and I'm the only one in my family who really did, because the next oldest had already started school, and I had about 3 or 4 years before I started school, and I just spent all my time with my mother, who I would help out around the house, or my father, and then he would he would go and buy equipment, and then we'd go to the equipment store and the feed store, the fertilizer store, and frequently I would be able to go with him in the truck to sell the products, sweet corn, string beans, tomatoes. He had a greenhouse. Where I really noticed the unusual thing about my father is when I got to school, because in talking to the other students, I began to realize that my father really lived a different life from their fathers, because their fathers mostly had jobs, a lot of blue collar work then, some office work, but most people were, they were salaried. And my father wasn't. My father was his own boss. And I think I was, totally sold on this at a very young age, that when you grew up, you didn't work for somebody. You actually had your own business. And it was just, he could make up his days. And it's chancy too, because so much of it depends upon unpredictable weather. Too hot, too dry, too much rain. You could have frost at the wrong time, and if you had greenhouses, one of the worst fears was actually hailstones that could literally take out all the glass. So this was interesting too, that there was, other people didn't have this kind of risk related to their income. And but the biggest thing about observing my father and being with him was first of all, just observation what a great salesperson he was. And that I think my father could sell anybody on anything. And I really just totally realized that this was a crucial life skill. And he was very gregarious and very outgoing, actually much more so than I am. And he just had this amazing ability to connect with people. And so this was a whole separate world for me, just watching my father. And I don't think that my brothers and sisters ever picked up on what I was seeing. And for the most part, they haven't really become their own bosses in the same way that he became, and also that I became. And I think it was just because they didn't have the observation time, or they weren't interested, or whatever the story is. But having that role model at such a young age, and then just having hours and hours of observing the difference of freedom that my father had compared to everyone else, just set me out on this path of, as soon as I could, as soon as I got out of school, as soon as I got out into the marketplace, I would create my own business, and I would be my own boss.